We're in Hong Kong now, where protest leaders have asked their supporters to vote over whether to accept the government's proposals and end their sitting. The protest leaders had previously rejected the government's offer to set up a platform for debating reform and to report to Beijing on the protests. They said a strong show of support for this stance would help them in their negotiations with the government. Protests calling for a full democracy for Hong Kong began in September. Now, on Tuesday, student protest leaders and government officials held talks for the first time, but made little progress towards ending the impasse. The VOA's Brian Padden tells us more in this report.
Today's development is that protest leaders have announced they will hold internal elections to see how to respond to a government offer made earlier this week during talks between protest leaders and government officials. The government has offered to detail in a written report to Beijing the grievances and demands of the protesters. And secondly, they offered to form a joint committee that would look at political reform moving forward. Earlier, the protest leaders had rejected this offer out of hand. Now they're going back to their people to see what they think. No one thinks that this election, like the talks earlier in the week, will resolve the current crisis. Pro-democracy protesters have taken over 3 sites in Hong Kong. They've been taking them over now for almost 4 weeks, almost a month. The protesters are demanding direct elections for the chief executive position without China, as is currently the practice, without China first approving qualified candidates or not. The number of protesters that come out on the streets, it varies from day to day. There's more in the evening than during the day. During the televised talks, there were tens of thousands on the streets here behind me. There continue to be some skirmishes at the edge of some of the protest sites. Anti-protest groups tried to knock down the barricades and clear the streets. Police have cleared some streets around some of the protest sites, easing traffic somewhat. Otherwise, the situation remains calm. The protest supporters seem to be ready to stay here for the long term. You see tents now have appeared. There are study groups and study areas for students so that they can keep up with their schoolwork. And there seems to be no end in sight to this ongoing stalemate between the government and the protesters. For Channels TV, Brian Padden.